Hey Luke, have you heard of a website called Twitter?
I have, Michael, yes.
Well, the little guy called John Boyega has been using it to take down one of the most toxic fandoms in the world, the Star Wars fandom. Except this time, the Star Wars fandom wasn't angry dudes, it was angry women. So it looks like equality has made leaps and bounds already this decade.
Yes, you're completely right. I think that's the key now. When toxic fans don't just have to be men anymore complaining about John Boyega's race. They can be toxic women as well, who, of course, reacted. So some of them were just really dumb, but some of them did get a bit racist back there. But yeah, no, that's Star Wars for you. The fans are completely irrational, and I think John Boyega and the rest of the cast is probably pretty glad that they're done with them.
Yeah, I think basically what we need to happen now is we need for a predominantly female franchise to be remade with an all-male cast, and then we can have a load of women harass the male stars, and then we will have achieved true equality, finally. Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke. And this week we are starting off the year and the decade by looking at American Beauty. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about American Beauty?
Sure thing, Michael. So yes, we are starting off the decade with the Oscar-winning movie of 1999. It won the Oscar in 2000, came out in 1999, which is American Beauty. So it is a drama film written by Alan Ball and directed by Sam Mendes in his feature directional debut. So a very good film to have first on your CV, I guess. Stars Kevin Spacey, Annette Bening, Thora Birch, Alison Janney, Peter Gallagher, Mina Savari, Wise Bentley, and Chris Cooper. It was released on September the 15th, 1999, in the United States. So yeah, just over 20 years ago. And Michael, can you tell me the budget for American Beauty?
$12 million.
$15 million.
Good.
Yeah, good guess. And can you tell me the box office for American Beauty?
$125 million.
A lot more.
Oh, $230 million.
356.
Blimey.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Back in the day, we talked about
people cared about the Oscars.
Yeah, people cared about the Oscars. People cared about the movies which got nominated. So yeah, and again, we talked about, I guess, when reflecting on the decade, about how movies which were riskier got pushed to the side by the studios, and so yeah, only movies which are guaranteed hits are the ones which get promoted, I guess, a lot by the studios and stuff. So yeah, this is a movie which, again, is of its time in 1999 in more ways than one, a Oscar-winning picture which grossed $356 million. It received praise, of course, on its initial release, and it won Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor for the one, the only Kevin Spacey.
Sure did.
Along with Best Original Screenplay and Best Cinematography. So yes, a very popular movie, a very praised movie, and yeah, so we're going to be selecting and reflecting on this today. And so, Michael, did you like this movie?
Yes, I did, Luke. Did you like this movie?
Yes, I did like this movie.
Good.
I think, obviously, I've said to you before, this is one of my favourite movies.
Yes, you have.
Not for the reasons that people might associate with, well, when they initially think about this movie, but something a bit deeper than that. But obviously we'll get into that. First and foremost, though, how many nitpicks do you have?
I've got 2. How many do you have?
I have 3.
Oh, blimey. Mr. likes this film, apparently hates it.
Yeah.
So I go first because I've got 2. Okay, so first one, it's weird that Kevin Spacey decided to blackmail the guy by saying that, what if I let you blow me? Because it's like his masculinity and his heterosexuality is so fragile that he can't even entertain the notion, even when imagining a blackmail, that actually probably the person doing the sexual harassing is going to be the one who wants to be blowed. Like, I don't know much about sexual harassment. I'm going to assume that pretty much 99% of sexual harassers who are men aren't going to be like, please let me blow you to another guy. They're going to be like, suck my dick. They're not, it's stupid. He should have said, can you prove that you didn't offer to give me my job if I blew you? It doesn't make sense to say, can you prove that you didn't offer to give me your job if I let you blow me? Idiot.
Can you just say what a hero to women you are? Like, I don't know a lot about sexual harassment. Yeah,
I know, yeah.
That's
true. Well, it's because I don't have to experience it, because because of privilege. And finally, this one I was deliberating on. I was like, you know what? In for a penny, in for a pound. Where's the exit wound on his head?
Maybe it was the other side.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, what I don't get about it is like he gets shot in the head from behind, and then it seems like the blood splatters in front of him. So, like, because what I was thinking maybe is that it got embedded in his head, or maybe it went like in the like. The only thing I can think is that the guy had the gun on the back of his head pointed up, and it comes out of his skull from the the top and kind of sprays blood that way. That's the only explanation I can think of. But I would feel much more at ease if they just gave him a big bullet wound on the front of his head. So,
okay.
What are your nitpicks?
Thanks, Matt. So, my first nitpick, Janie, Kevin Spacey's daughter. How the hell is she a cheerleader? It just seems like that's the absolute last thing that she would be.
Maybe her mum pressured her into it at a young age and she's just not got around to getting out of it. But maybe they should have added that as a detail.
But the thing is, their parents say that she cares about it. Like, she's been practicing her steps for weeks. So that doesn't really fit in with her character.
Maybe the mum's lying. Don't worry, Luke. I've got a million excuses for this film. Because I love it so much, unlike you.
Yes. So this one was really weird. Kevin Spacey gets fully naked when he decides to work out for the first time. I can understand taking off the shirt and trousers, but maybe Spacey insisted that he take off all of his clothes. I think
maybe if you have a really big dick, then like seeing it kind of gets the testosterone pumping, which like because you're like, yeah, I'm a man. Like if you had a small dick, you'd probably see it and you'd be like, oh, I don't feel like working out. But if you got a big one, you'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna make my muscles as big as that. Okay. So it's inspiration.
Nice theory. Last one. I just found this really weird. Like Kevin Spacey when Ricky is going to school with Janie and her mom. Mm-hmm. Kevin Spacey's sister Ricky, like, call me, like, mouths it. I just think surely there's a better way of doing that. Like, and
that's true. Yeah,
he can see his dad right there, so he's probably not thinking that Ricky's dad's thinking, oh, they're having a gay affair together, but that has to arouse some suspicion.
Yeah, not I just think getting aroused.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just think it's a bit shit that happened.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, like as a comparison, let's say that it was like a man. You were a man, and it was like your daughter's friend. You wouldn't be like, even if you had something like, even if you had a rapport with your daughter's friend, you wouldn't be like, call me. You go, because you know how that would look. So yeah, he's an idiot, stupid man. He's
an idiot, and also I like how the first tape that Ricky's father takes is the one that reveals to him that he's been videoing Kevin Spacey in the nude as well.
Yeah, that is true, yeah. Otherwise, you just see him like looking at an old dead homeless woman.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, wow. He's into old dead homeless women.
Fuck me, man.
No son of mine's going to like old dead homeless women.
So, Michael, Kevin Spacey stars as Lester Burnham, an advertising executive. Is he an executive?
Maybe. I mean, he did get like 60,000, which I know was partially from blackmail, but I feel like that's indicative of the fact he was probably getting a big wage anyway. Otherwise, if he was just like the janitor, they probably wouldn't give him $60,000. But yeah.
Yeah, who has a midlife crisis when he becomes infatuated with his teenage daughter's best friend, played by Mina Savari. Annette Bening stars as Lester's materialistic wife, Carolyn, and Thora Birch plays their insecure daughter.
Thor Ragnarok?
Okay. Jane. Wes Bentley, Chris Cooper, and Alison Janney also feature. Academics have described the film as a satire of American middle-class notions of beauty and personal satisfaction. Further analysis has focused on the film's explorations of romantic and paternal love, sexuality, materialism, self-liberation, and redemption. So yeah, we'll go through all of that, but first, the plot.
Do you know what I call it, Luke? I call it Desperate Housewives, the movie.
Why?
Because, have you ever seen Desperate Housewives or know anything about it?
What do you think?
Desperate Housewives is very shockingly thematically dense. As you know, I'm a bit of a Lothario, and I have a significant other currently, and we've been actually watching the Desperate Housewives series, and I actually quite enjoy it because it's not well written, but it's very clear that they actually do have a message they're trying to communicate, but it's just really thematically dense. Like every single episode, each character has something they've got to deal with, which basically relates to how being a suburban person is really shit. So basically, I'm going to say it right now, Desperate Housewives is like fan fiction for the American Beauty cinematic universe. So you should watch it, and then you should upload a very long review to our channel called Desperate Housewives is an underrated TV gem, and I will appreciate it. Anyway, what I find weird about this film, I don't know about you, Luke, is what's with the opening scene?
Oh, the opening scene, yes. Okay, so that's when Janie says, I'm going to kill you.
Sorry, she's going to turn into a real bitch like her mother.
She says, could you kill my dad, jokingly? And here's the thing. You have that, and then Lester says, in the next scene, as he's narrating over his suburban neighborhood, it's like, well, I died or something. Like he
he
says
that.
right away, I'm dead. And I think I agree with Professor Anne Hall, who I saw on Wikipedia said, by presenting an early resolution to the mystery, the film allows the audience to put it aside, to view the film and its philosophical issues. So here's the thing. I don't really... If you're gonna put the... Janie talking about murdering her dad right at the start, along with Lester talking about it, it kind of just, like Professor Hall says, just shoves it to one side. But you didn't really need to talk about that anyway. Or maybe it's because people, when they're coming out of the cinema, they will be really shocked, obviously watching it the first time, they'll be really shocked at the fact that Lester dies because there's no build-up. Like, there's literally no build-up. No one expects him to die if you cut out those opening couple of scenes. So therefore, to, again, make sure that the film's themes get pushed to the forefront of people's minds, they tackle it right at the beginning of the movie. So it's he dies.
Would you say that the decision to have, obviously, Jamie be the one talking about killing her dad is not so much intending to misdirect the audience as it is just, well, we need a scene where somebody talks about killing him so that we can really hammer home the fact he is going to die. I think that makes sense, because I was watching it and thinking to myself, because obviously, I've seen this film many times, so I was thinking, are they trying to trick me? It doesn't really feel like it, but I also wonder why it is that we have a character who obviously is not responsible for Lester's death, saying all this stuff. And of course, in the actual film later on, as we see, right after the, do you want me to kill him? And she's like, yeah, would you? She basically just says, I'm joking, right? I don't really want you to do that. It's like a real Luke Skywalker throws his lightsaber over the side of him, but it was on purpose. So we like it.
It kind of also, I think, the way the movie ends, it sets up a three-way mystery. It's like, who's got the gun to the back of Lester's head? His wife obviously is shown having a gun in a car. And as we know at the start of the movie, Ricky said, "Yeah, I'll kill your dad." And then it's actually Ricky's dad. So I just think there's a little bit of mystery in there. That's why they did it. And
also to create intrigue.
Yeah, to create a bit of intrigue. Yes,
go, ooh, it's exciting.
I think the major point is it's just making sure that you think about what's going on in the movie instead of focusing on his death, and also at the end of the movie, you again focus on the message and not his death.
Just like how Desperate Housewives starts with the woman shooting herself in the head.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Very first scene. So, it's what they do. If you want to make a film about the suburbs where the essential message is that the suburbs aren't all they seem to be, you start with an opening scene that illustrates the reality of death, particularly murder, in the suburbs. Anyway, what else have you got to talk about regarding a plot, Luke? Because something we should point out right away is that this film is, as you already said, a very dense philosophical and thematic film.
Yes.
And that, in a sense, the primary plot element, which is the events that lead to Lester's death, is intentionally eschewed so that we can just focus on the thematic issues. But do you have anything else that's specifically plot related to bring to the table?
That's the thing. There's not really a plot in this movie.
Exactly.
That's the thing. And we'll get on to when talking about the themes, like what is this movie about? Well, there isn't anything that really happens majorly in the last, apart from the ending, obviously, in the last, from after 30 minutes for the next hour and a half, because the movie's about 2 hours long.
Yeah.
For that hour and a half period, it's not really anything that happens. It's just characters basically reaffirming their character and their beliefs and their, emotions about a whole bunch of stuff. So that's the thing. It's just kind of repeating. You see Lester do a bunch of stuff which fits in with how his character is now. Like how his character is transformed. Like, he gets a job, flipping burgers. Then I
wish he got a job eating burgers.
Then he blackmails his boss, and he puts his feet up on the couch. Yeah, I know, right? Crazy. And he's about to spill beer on the couch, and he's like, "It's just a couch, man." Yeah, it reaffirms basically his philosophy that materialism is awful, and I just want to have no responsibility and all of that. And that's the thing with all the other characters.
Yeah, I think if you boil down the plot, you could essentially say the plot is as simple as homophobic guy moves in next door, his son starts selling pot to the neighbouring dad, at which point the homophobic guy, concludes that there's actually a gay relationship going on between his kid and the dad, and after trying to kiss the dad and getting rejected, he decides to kill him. Like, that's the plot. That's the main things that happen, which would be like beats in a plot. Almost everything else that happens is like just stuff to get across the film's real message, which doesn't really relate to Lester's death, but rather the nature of suburban life.
Yeah, like, you don't really... I mean, the scenes are fun and all, but like you don't really need to see a lot of scenes if you're trying to watch the movie for a plot.
Ultimately, the fact that she tries to sell that house and then she can't, because you know what? When I think lagoon, I think tropical. This is just a cement hole. That doesn't really affect the overall plot.
No, you're right, it doesn't. It's just, exploring their characters.
I like it. There should be like an alternative ending where it cuts after Lester's dead and you just see a woman with a gun. She's like, trying to sell me a house without many plants.
That'd be hilarious.
And it would be funny because it would subvert your expectations.
I do have a problem, though, with the plot. And here's the thing, obviously. Yeah, well, like I said before, it's like half an hour of them. They start off, with all these problems, and then all the main characters get into the stride and then become who they are going to be for the rest of the movie. But it all happens like on the same day. So obviously Janie reveals her dissatisfaction with her parents. The new neighbours move in. Lester realises he could be getting fired, and Carolyn has a breakdown about not selling a house. Like, this all happens on the same day. Maybe you could say, well, Carolyn keeps on having a breakdown about not selling her house. I'm not sure. So maybe you could cross that one off. But it does seem like all of these things that trigger our characters' exploration of themselves, it kind of all starts on the same day. Which I don't really like.
It's a bit like how in Desperate Housewives, within
the
space of a month, Paul Young's wife kills himself, and then Mike Delfino happens to move on to the neighborhood, and also Carlos gets arrested for tax fraud, all in the space of like a week. It's pretty stupid, isn't it?
Yeah, it is pretty stupid. Yes, it is. It's like just go back to Star Wars when The Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi. They are set over the course of like 4 days. Yeah, it's just,
and it's literally just like the First Order was like just some weirdos, and then it's like at the beginning of The Last Jedi, the First Order rules.
Yeah,
blimey.
Yeah, blimey.
Yeah, that's great.
Wow, things.
Say what you will about this film, but at least it didn't end with a galactic empire having inexplicably taken control of the universe.
Yeah,
so it's more realistic than The Last Jedi.
After their massive Star Killer base literally got destroyed at the end of the last episode.
Yeah,
and that was the climax. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good ending if after Lester had been killed, it zoomed out and it was actually a giant space station that had shot him. And it had some personal issues to work through. Anyway, so themes.
Obviously, there are a lot of themes, and before we dive into
At least three.
Well, you mentioned, we will mention suburbia and how it sucks. That's one of the themes.
Materialism and how it sucks.
Capitalism.
Okay, not how it sucks, because we're raving capitalists. We have and always will be capitalists. Homophobia and how it's awesome. And finally...
And beauty.
Beauty, yes, because of course this film is called Beautiful American. Anyway, but starting off with suburbia. Do you live in suburbia, Luke?
I do live in suburbia, yeah.
And do you ever dream of living that perfect suburban life? Do you ever dream about having a nice McMansion, probably with maybe a Juliet balcony and a nice hedgerow, and you've got some flowers, and it's like just you go out and you mow your lawn and you see the neighbor and you go, hey neighbor, and your kids just have a right old good time, probably playing baseball, maybe, and occasionally something slightly interesting will happen. Is that what you dream about, Luke?
Yeah, and the black neighbors move in across the street and everyone gets a bit twitchy.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the best part. But guess what, Luke? Actually, maybe if you live that life, you might not be entirely fulfilled. You see, this film suggests that perhaps this is all a performance, such as when we find out that what's-her-face, I can't remember anyone's name, probably Carolyn, has the same gardening clogs, the same colour as her handle for her shears, and it shows how mental these people are, like the Stepford Wives. What do you think?
Yeah, the message from this movie, probably the biggest message, I guess you could look at materialism and capitalism and all of that and group it under the title Suburban Life Sucks. Like, the whole shebang just is really unfulfilling. Like, all the characters are affected by it apart from Ricky, who of course is an outsider. Obviously, the character that this affects the most is Lester, who is going through a standard midlife crisis, tries to do everything possible to get out of this suburban trap, I guess, is the word I'd use. But he obviously takes a job flipping burgers, buys a new car, tries to regress to a point where he can see, as he puts it, his whole life ahead of him. Doesn't want to basically conform to how people his age, I guess, should, in quotation marks, be acting. So yeah, I guess that is the main message of the movie.
Yeah.
How
It did just occur to me that a midlife crisis is probably something of a theme in itself, or like a big thing that this film's about, because this film is about a midlife crisis. And obviously, but I think definitely it's true that the kind of person who's likely to have a midlife crisis is the kind of person who lives in the suburbs. Because the whole appeal of the suburbs is almost supposed to be like that you've made it once you live in the suburbs, and like everything's fine now, everything's going to be hunky dory.
You have made it living in suburbia. You've got a nice life, but wait, how come you feel so unfulfilled? And then Lester, obviously, he right at the start of the movie is saying, "Well, I've been dead for a while now." So
yes, exactly.
That's how he feels about suburban life, and obviously, this movie is trying to say people are basically wasting their lives in these suburbs, which of course it's meant to seem like perfection. But the issue with this, I guess, well, here's the thing: there's not an issue with it, but this mindset, very 1990s. I think the idea that suburbia isn't this idyllic place is very commonplace in our culture now. I remember the Always Sunny...
probably because of Desperate Housewives.
Yeah, maybe. But,
I was thinking of Always Sunny too.
Yeah, that Always Sunny episode, obviously, where Dennis and Mac, I think it is, they go and live in the suburbs, and they just start to hate each other and hate everything, and obviously the idea is it's just completely unfulfilling, and that again, I think that this movie tapped into something. Like, there was a lot of dissatisfaction, I'm guessing. Obviously, I was alive in the late 90s, but I wasn't, knowledgeable about this stuff, but there was seemingly a dissatisfaction about suburban monotony and the malaise of suburban life, which probably struck a chord with a lot of people who would be baby boomers, who life had granted them a bunch of success. They've never had to worry about anything really from when they were born in the 50s to when they're like in their mid-40s in the late 90s, but they still were incredibly dissatisfied, and they probably saw themselves, particularly the male ones watching, of course, in Lester Burnham. So that's what it's about, really. And again, that's the thing. I'm going to discuss an article later talking about how this movie has aged poorly. But at the time, this movie was groundbreaking. The way it pictured American suburban life and sat-eyed it was like, oh wow, this is very interesting. Now it just looks like, well, of course, suburban life is shit. It's unfulfilling. It's hollow. Like, that's something that is a common idea nowadays. But that is the central premise. And again, in 1999, that was probably a very exciting thesis for a movie to have. But
I think the one question that's kind of posed, therefore, by the idea that suburban life is rubbish is, I guess, number one, is that a bit first world problemsy? And number two, if suburban life is rubbish, what is there such a thing as a perfect idyllic life, or is the very notion of the perfect idyllic life and the fact that suburban life is portrayed as a perfect idyllic life inevitably going to create a sort of existential crisis?
Well, the movie doesn't answer those questions.
Answer them, Luke. I want you to.
Well, you want me? So this is kind of separate to the movie.
Yeah, I want you to do what this movie failed to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably exceptions. I think here's the thing: I have not lived in an apartment in my life, but apparently living in apartments is good because you do have a community there. That's just what I picked up from people who said that on Twitter when talking about suburbia, like all the random times I've seen that across the years. So maybe that's the key. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, personally, I'll say I'm not... I feel like I'll probably end up living in the suburbs. I may end up in... Obviously, we should say that what you kind of get here is, to an extent, a parody. Nobody lives in such a ridiculously suburban life as, like, the perfect... Well, probably there are some people who have that, but most people don't literally live like that. But I probably will end up living something similar to this, and I imagine it won't be a constant nightmare. But the point the film is making is it's certainly not the absolute heavenly paradise it's portrayed as. The other thing is, obviously, we've spoken about how the external interaction of the suburban life is bad. The other aspect is the internal aspect of the suburban life, namely the suburban nuclear family. And this film does a lot to criticize that. Obviously, you get the scene where they're eating dinner, and they just look like they just hate each other so much. They're like not happy. It's almost like they feel like they're being forced to just endure each other's company. And they argue all the time. So, yeah, what do you think about this film's, I guess, criticism of the suburban nuclear family?
Well, again, that's just it's another point it's making. Like, this is what suburbia does. It makes your family, like, stretched apart, I guess. Nobody's happy. Makes your marriage, in the case of Lester and Carolyn, makes them, well, sexless, I guess that's the best way to put it. They're not intimate with each other. And so, it's just... They're all these characters are just trapped, but they can't break out, and they don't even kind of know they're trapped either. That's the message that this movie's making. Yeah, which again, it's something that has been made many times after this. But, yeah. So that's the thing. I keep on you watch this movie with 20 years on, and it is like, there's nothing groundbreaking here. But again, I have to go back to at the time in 1999, it probably was.
I think one of the things that makes this portrayal of the suburban family so kind of bad is in it looks bad. Obviously, the portrayal's accurate, but that because there is a performative nature to being in the polite society. Basically, it means that everything has to be perfect, and you're not supposed to show all of your problems. And the fact that basically the family has to pretend to be perfect means that everything which shows they're not perfect becomes an issue. Like, for example, Lester quits his job that he hates to do a job which he enjoys much more because it has less responsibility, but of course that causes conflict because it's a less high status job, which then creates conflict with his family because part of the performativity of being a suburban person is, you do a nice, respectable middle-class job. If you say you do a low-skilled job, then there's the stigma that comes against that. And obviously, Carolyn says, are you trying to look unattractive to a daughter? And again, the point is, you want to show how perfect your family is. So ultimately, the fact, in a way, you can't necessarily separate the outward performativity and the internal conflict because it comes from trying to pretend you're something you're not.
Yeah, you're talking about how everything is superficial, basically. And obviously this is going into materialism now, which we're going to talk about. But like I said before, materialism and capitalism and all that, it comes under suburbia. It's all connected to that pristine image of, a nuclear family in a suburban house with a car and maybe a dog that's implanted in your mind, and how actually, that's not actually what makes people happy. But anyway, so let's get into materialism now.
Yes, so you know that we're living in a material world, and we are both material girls. I think, actually, on that note, what would be appropriate is we've just spoken about how the family is kind of bad because it's all superficial and has to do with materialism. I think the flip side is something you see characters in this film do, particularly Carolyn, but also to an extent you could say Kevin Spacey or Lester Burnham. But Carolyn obviously has that line where she slaps what's-her-face girl and says, you ungrateful brat, look at everything you have. And she talks about how she didn't have anything growing up. And obviously the implication is, you aren't allowed to be upset about the fact that this family is really super dysfunctional and not an enjoyable family to be a member of because you've got loads of stuff. Yes. And then obviously with Lester Burnham, you get the fact that he uses stuff as a means to fulfill himself as a result of his midlife crisis. So what do you think about the two parents' attitude towards, saying that stuff is what makes them happy?
Well, again, Kevin Spacey takes a philosophy. He changes, doesn't he? After he basically smokes weed with what's he called, Ricky, and then he's
Ricky,
then he's it kind of transports him back to his youth when he obviously wasn't as materialistic as he is now. And then he basically just puts his feet up on the table like before, isn't cared about spilling beer on the couch, in complete opposition to his wife, who is, again, if we're talking about which character embodies materialism, it is obviously his wife Carolyn, insecure, workaholic, stressed out, trying to achieve success by projecting an image of success. It's all about all about the image. Incredibly phony as Angela. Yeah, that's it. I mean, as far as character calls out, she's just so desperate to alter people's perceptions of her, basically. So and obviously that is portrayed as a bad thing. That is very clear, and I guess you're right. That is what suburban life often does come down to, and it is obviously very hollow. And it's just who really cares how much the couch costs? I mean, I agree with this mantra perfectly. I'm not someone who is materialist, and you have said it yourself, you're not either. I guess. What more can you say about that? Again, this is a critique which I think is
valid.
It's valid,
insightful.
Yeah, insightful, but not very insightful at the same time because
because it's kind of obvious.
It's
especially
kind of obvious. Yes. Again.
Yeah, I did have one thing to say actually about the fact that because obviously Kevin Spacey, he does engage in purchasing as part of his act of rebellion. I think what distinguishes Kevin or Lester Burnham's, let's say, spending from Carolyn's spending is that Lester Burnham basically says because she said, why have you got that car? And he says, it's the car I always wanted and now I have it. I rule. And the implication is, he owns it because it has a particular use to him and it is kind of an expression of himself.
Yeah.
It's an expression of his own desires and his own personality. Whereas what Carolyn owns is an expression of her status. And you could say, for example, obviously having a practical, maybe slightly smart, but not flashy car would be representative of the fact that your family is, you're well-to-do, you've obviously got a nice smart car, but also you're functional, you're sensible, you're not crazy people, you're not rebels, you've got just a nice sensible car. And obviously if somebody gets a big red hot rod, that suggests something about their character. And obviously, yeah, so Kevin Spacey, I'm going to keep calling him, I like to call him, I think he's a good actor, but I'm going to call him Kevin Spacey because I think of him as Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey buys this stuff basically because he wants it, whereas Carolyn buys this stuff because it shows something about herself. It makes her say, this is my status, look at all this stuff I have. And that's, I think, the big difference. So it's not, you can't buy things, because Kevin Spacey's not a minimalist. He's not like, one must lose absence of desire. Or something like that. Yeah. He's like, no, he's like, well, if you want something, go buy it, but do it because you want it, not because you want to be like, this is a really expensive couch. Yeah. Don't spill beer on it, yeah.
Not because you want to show off, basically.
Yeah. Oh, and Carolyn's the kind of person who would put like cushions on, like the people who put cushions on beds, and then, like, obviously people put pillows on beds, but like put the cushions on the bed, and then you get into bed and you just got to take the cushions off. Like, there's nothing to do with them. They're not comfortable to lie on. Have you ever been like a house that they got the kind of the silk cushions?
I've never been in a house that expensive.
Have you never been? Wow, maybe it just shows that I'm slightly more.
No, I have no idea if I have or not, but I just don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, right, okay. Well, yeah, basically there's people who put like cushions. I mean, my mum sometimes will put them on my bed, but like cushions, she puts them there. She's like, yeah, it's a nice cushion. It looks nice. You literally, you can't sleep on it. It's not useful for sleeping on it because it's a really tiny little decorative cushion.
This is a very good point you're making, yeah.
So you just take it off.
One more thing.
And that's the point. That's what Carolyn would do.
Okay. Yeah, you're
it's
right.
Not useful.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, all about that image. But here's the thing with Carolyn.
Yeah.
She embodies materialism and all of that, but she doesn't, like, Spacey, he has an arc. He changes, and then he realizes at the end when he chooses not to have sex with his daughter's friend that, I need to be more responsible, etc. Which kind of ties into, when talking about what we're going to talk about next, which is capitalism. But with Carolyn, she doesn't have an arc. She doesn't have a moment of closure, like a resolution, because obviously she starts off the movie. Her first major scene, alone, having a breakdown, trying to slap herself to, be strong, like having a fit, and, trying to force herself to remove her humanity, basically, and just become like who the guy she ends up having an affair with, what's he called? King? The real estate guy?
Buddy King?
Buddy King. Yeah, trying to emulate him. And obviously then he breaks up with her. But she that's the thing, what frustrates me. She doesn't have a moment of resolution, a moment where she realizes, oh shit.
Well, how does she ultimately express her sense of loss for Lester? She hugs his clothes. Which is representative of the items he possessed. Maybe. Obviously she breaks down. It's like it's a bit like in Desperate Housewives when Brie, because she's so insistent that they don't show anything's wrong, when her husband dies, she never shows any emotion about it at all, and she ends up being accused of being responsible for his murder. So the lesson is, if your husband dies, you can't just bottle up your emotions. You need to express them, or else people might think you murdered him.
Yeah, okay, but that's the thing. Do you think that's a resolution for her, like crying into
No,
his
no,
clothes?
I don't think. Sorry, I agree with you. She should cry outside. She should go outside and cry.
She should
be really melodramatic about it. Really
she should have a moment. I don't know how you'd fix this in, because of course you want to create a mystery about who killed Kevin Spacey. Maybe you don't just have that mystery. Maybe you forgo that mystery and have a realization after. Buddy King leaves her that, shit, I have been going down the wrong path here. I need to, focus on things that actually matter. That would be nice, but unfortunately that's not the case. So that's just a thing a quibble I have with Carolyn's character.
Final thing actually on materialism. Again, it's kind of to do with the idea of presenting an image of success, which I think we've covered enough, basically. Just, the idea of you're supposed to make yourself look good, fake it till you make it. Obviously, if you can't pretend to be happy, and I think, obviously there is a relevance there to the whole American, like Americans, one of the things that we as Europeans associate with America is the whole, customer service, like everyone's smiling. Yes. I've never been to America. I don't know whether or not that's actually true, but the stereotype is that you show up at a kind of a store where people should literally hate their jobs and they'll be like smiling, like, hey, how can I help you?
Yeah, that's not the case.
You've been to America, then they're not really. Okay, yeah, but that's like an image.
At least in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's a conception of America that we have in the UK, which obviously has some source in the actual culture of America, which is one of be happy. Oh dear. Have you ever seen that video of like the Walmart chant that the people are doing? But so before each day at work,
yes,
like, we are Walmart.
Well, this links to our next topic.
I was going to say, sorry, I kind of interrupted you, because one thing I wanted to say about presenting an image was, of course, what's her face's line? There's nothing worse than being ordinary. Angela, right? She says there's nothing worse than being ordinary. I think that's just another example of, you present this image. So it's like the number one thing you need to be is not ordinary. You need to be exciting and out there. And obviously the way she chooses to express how unordinary she is by being conventionally attractive, which of course is actually being conventional, which is sort of on the same path as ordinary. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, Angela does have that, is it a moment of clarity, I guess? Well, we talked about how Carolyn, obviously, she didn't have a resolution to, going down the wrong path of, caring about material things and trying to be faking stuff. Obviously, Angela doesn't care about material things. But also, like Carolyn, she projects an image which isn't actually true to herself. And eventually she kind of, I hope, at the end, I can't really remember, does she have this moment of clarity where it's like, I shouldn't have been as, lying. I should just...
I don't think she necessarily expresses it verbally. I mean, obviously she admits that she's a virgin and things like that. But I think you kind of get the impression with just the way she is portrayed in the final scene, which is a lot more sort of vulnerable, that the image she's been presenting heretofore of herself as someone who's like hyper capable and like always,
a grown up, basically,
exactly, like a grown up, is sort of that she's abandoned that. And obviously maybe that's not permanent, but definitely it's at least implied that she becomes a bit more well-rounded.
Yes, I agree. Anyway, let's talk. And also, obviously, she chastises Carolyn as well for being a phony. So she, at some level, understands that she is a phony. Anyway, capitalism now. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, more like capitalism.
More like capitalism, because I like this movie because, again, we talked about it with Fight Club, talked about it with... we haven't talked about it with Matrix, but we discussed it in the context of The Matrix. Yeah. Also, other movies that came out in 1999, Bringing Out the Dead, Magnolia as well.
What about... I mean, this wasn't 1999, but obviously we got Bug's Life, the great anti-capitalist masterpiece.
Yeah, Bug's Life is a bit different.
It's not us who need you, it's you who need us. We're the ones who do all the work, you filthy capitalist.
Yes.
I love that scene. That's
a great thing. Yeah, so this... Around 1999... I think American culture, I think you can see with all the movies that came out, was starting to question capitalism. American Beauty really does kind of instruct its audience, hey, you gotta lead more meaningful lives than just going to work and, being so subservient to your bosses and then just getting home and just, watching some shit on the TV and I guess that's mainly suburban life, but let's stick specifically on the job bit. Because obviously Kevin Spacey tells his boss to shove it and basically delivers a scathing letter detailing the many complaints that the proletariat have had over the course of forever, basically. But certainly since America, the golden age of American capitalism, 60s onwards, basically, about how what does he say to his boss? I have to basically mask my contempt for you.
Oh, yeah, that is it,
Yeah. So again, it's something that, again, I want to talk about more as to why I like this movie later on, but obviously critiquing capitalism is a central thing. Again, this movie comes out in a time period after the end of the Soviet Union and about 10 years after. So we're getting to a stage now where it's been quite a while since communism has existed.
Yeah,
so people, this movie wouldn't have been made, for instance, in 1989 because it's like, well, this, okay, if you don't like your job, if you don't like capitalism, which this movie seems
you don't like it, move to Russia.
Yeah, it seems to be inferring. It's like, well, you know what about communism? Hey, that's awful as well. You just look at Soviet Russia and how awful they're doing. So again, this is a very interesting time period in America, which is one of the reasons why I like it. But anything to say about this movie critiquing capitalism?
I mean, basically, one of the things I will say, actually, is that we spoke before about is suburban life terrible? And one of the things I wanted to say, but I figured I'd save it until here, is it's not really suburban life that's terrible. It's capitalism that's terrible. But the thing is, okay, I will say this. It's not necessarily... The reason why I was reticent to say...
I think the two things are separate, though.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of the thing that makes suburban life bad, in a way, is the soul-sucking nature of capitalism, and obviously alienation, all that stuff. I will say, I think you could make an argument that, obviously... in the purest sense, the things that define capitalism are obviously objectionable. Things like the fact that, by definition, there is going to always be a class of people who do not have control over their own labour, which is inevitably going to lead to a sense of separation between what you're actually doing and the value of what you're doing. But I think the other thing about this film critiques, and I think critiques more substantially, is something which isn't necessary for capitalism, necessary to capitalism, but is certainly an aspect of current capitalism. And at least, if nothing else, this is the thing which definitely causes real kind of a sense of loss of purpose, and that's the need for made up nonsense bullshit jobs created by the perpetual nature of capitalism. That capitalism has to create capital in order to create capital, in order to create capital, in order to create capital, and then obviously you get a big boom, everything goes terrible, blah, blah, blah. And obviously, what is Lester Burnham's job? He's an advertising executive. And what is an advertiser? An advertiser is somebody who takes all of the capital that's been generated, or not all of it, but part of the capital that's been generated from sales, from consumerism, and they use it to produce adverts, to fund more sales and more consumerism. And obviously, that's not a very fulfilling job. And
yes.
So I think basically, and you get things like the drain of the 9 to 5. And for many people in the suburbs who work middle class jobs, it's more than 9 to 5. They'll be like, they work overtime because they've got executives, things like that. And that's obviously extra draining. So yeah, basically, that's that shit.
Yeah, I think
this film does a good job at criticizing that.
Yes, again, capitalism isn't consumerism. I think we mentioned that in terms of advertising. But again, if you were making a movie criticizing capitalism and you wanted your protagonist in Lester Burnham to work, a middle class job, where would he be working? Well, he would be working again in advertising. That's probably the best place for him to be working, because again, he wouldn't be like an executive at fucking Walmart or somebody, because again, that'd be too high up, and he wouldn't be.
And also,
it wouldn't be like a low end worker working at, like, say, Walmart, like we mentioned before, working draining hours with not much pay, because it's not a middle class job. No, I think there is a separation between suburbia and capitalism, because you can be living in like an apartment and still be be abused by capitalism with low wages and long hours, like it's happened to quite a lot since the Great Recession of 2008. That has certainly been a major feature of capitalism in America, certainly. But yeah, I guess.
Yeah, just to clarify, the substantive point I was trying to make was that I think this film is less criticizing capitalism in itself and more kind of criticizing the very obviously bullshit aspects of capitalism that aren't necessary for it, but the things like the pointless jobs, the least fulfilling parts of capitalism. Yeah. So again, like I say, there's kind of a difference between that and capitalism itself. Like, this film never makes it never goes full marks.
No, it definitely does not go full marks. Yes, it's just criticizing the societal
situation. I guess you'd say maybe the kind of cultural attitude in a way, like the idea of working is good, being successful is good, sacrifice all of your free time at the altar of being a hard worker and getting the raise and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it never actually, like you said, goes full marks. And Kevin Spacey doesn't have a line about the fact that his bosses don't actually do anything. Or something
like Office Space.
Sorry?
Like Office Space. Have you ever seen that? When they do the interview and are like, what do you do here? And he's like, well, I'm in charge of connecting the people to the salespeople. It's like, well, why couldn't people just go to the salespeople directly? No, they're like, oh, so you physically take the stuff to the salespeople? It's like, well, I don't physically do it. I get someone else to do it. The delivery drivers or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so why couldn't they just arrange it? And he's like, well, because I need to arrange content. Oh, so you make the cool stuff? No, my secretary makes the cool stuff. And basically just like they go through like all the management tries to go through like everything they do. And literally every single time it's like someone else who's doing it.
It's just like, we don't actually need you here. Yeah, obviously that's the Ants message, of course, which we love. But yeah, when did Office Space come out again? Was it 99?
I think it was 98.
Was it 98? All right. So again, around this time, a lot of movies critiquing capitalism. And again, one of the reasons why this trend stopped, I suppose, is 2001, War on Terror, 9/11, and all that shit. But yeah, this is a movie which is a really unique part of American life, when people, the culture was starting to go, hey, you know what? Maybe capitalism isn't so great. Like, what a shit life someone like Lester Burnham's leading, who's made it. And of course, living in the suburbs is part of that, but also his job is also part of that as well. Yes, and the economic system which propagates his job. Shall we move on, Michael, to homophobia?
Yeah, let's move on to homophobia. So basically, it's hard to say homophobia is a theme, really. It's more of a quirk. No, basically, there's this character in this film who is distinctly homophobic. He's the general. I can't remember his name, but he's a general, and he doesn't like the gays.
He doesn't like the gays, no.
Yeah, and the main thing about it is, number one, this film presents kind of gay people in a very positive light. You obviously get the gay people are really friendly, they're really successful in their jobs, they're really fit. There's a scene where Kevin Spacey's like, wow, I've been working really hard, these guys haven't broken a sweat. I found that interesting, basically, the fact that it tries to show, hey, gays are great, gays are fantastic, I feel that's kind of a very 1990s way of dealing with people being gay. It's kind of like, how are we going to make a gay person be in there and make it be like, okay, oh, I know, we'll make them be like Superman. You know, you get it with The Simpsons and Carl. Remember the episode where he gets hair and he gets that secretary, and the secretary's Carl and he's gay and he's basically a hero. So yeah, what do you think about the idea of like the gay people being presented as pretty much perfect?
Well, again, I think it's just an idea that everyone in suburbs, everyone in middle America who's middle class, got a decent income, even if they're gay, tries to conform to this idea of how the Burnhams live. It's just, even if you're gay, you're going to be like the Burnhams. So it stretches beyond sexual orientation, basically.
Okay, so you're basically saying, in other words, that it's being even more woke, in that it's saying like, hey, guess what? Even if you're gay, you can still be roped into this crazy, mixed up suburban lifestyle where you just get eaten from the inside by this horrible drudgery of life.
I think that's why they are in there. I mean, if there's another reason, you can obviously tell me, but that's why I think the gay couple are in there. Nice to see them fight. Well, they do kind of fight at the beginning, but not a massive fight. It would be nice to see them having a bit more of a fight later on in the movie. And also, if you're going to, go past sexual orientation and, just look at everybody, you could also go past race as well. And actually, maybe there's actually no black characters in this movie, I don't think. I don't think one black person speaks a line, which... yeah, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, you could have, again, a black family who are across the street, who have the same issues, if you really want to hammer home that point. That no matter if you're gay, if you're black, if you're straight, like a perfect, normal, white, happy family like the Burnhams, typical middle Americans, everyone's going to have the same problems as them, no matter what they look like or anything like that. So that would be great to hammer at home, but they don't really. But again, the only reason why I think those gay characters are in there is because of that.
Okay, yeah, I mean, like I say, because obviously this film doesn't really explore the theme of homosexuality. I think basically the main thing I think, though, is that I think the fact they are shown to be more perfect is it's basically trying to be more pro-gay. And something that I also think is relevant to that, because I think there is possibly a criticism that could be made, which is like, well, why can't the gay characters be more obviously like the rest of the people? They seem to just be like, it's like, oh, they're perfect, and that's, that shows that being gay is fine. But the other thing that I think is relevant in that regard is the fact that you get the homophobic guy is secretly gay, which again I think is something which is often said, unsurprisingly, by people who are not anti-gay, people who are pro-gay people being able to, live and have rights and express their sexuality. But there is obviously another example of where nowadays people are much more critical of that notion of like, oh, that guy's a homophobe, but they must be gay, because it kind of implies that gay people are like the problem, which I find interesting. So like, I don't know, yeah, I just thought that was obviously, it's something which again is a really 1990s, early 2000s way of like saying, hey, look, we support the homosexuals, and you know what? Those people who are homophobic, they're probably secretly gay. And it's kind of like, yeah, but
okay,
maybe, but yeah.
I think.
What do you think?
Obviously, that is a stereotype.
Yeah,
I mean, all these characters are stereotype, which we'll get onto later. But yeah,
what?
Yeah, I know. But yeah, Ricky's dad. What's he called? Yeah, Colonel Fitz, obviously.
Oh yeah, Ricky. Yeah,
yeah, he's gay, Fitz. And I mean,
or he might be bisexual. Come on, let's be fair.
Yeah, I think the reason why he is gay is part of, I guess, part of the message of Ricky, which we'll get onto when talking about beauty. Yeah, I think he's basically trying to. Colonel Fitz is meant to be, the guy who's trying to conform the most, like the most out of everybody, and of course, by doing that, he's lying to himself. And how do you get a character like that to lie to himself? Well, he's actually gay. So that's what I think is going on with Colonel Fitz. Again, there is homophobia. Homophobia is obviously a central theme, a central plot point, because obviously Fitz thinks that Kevin Spacey's gay, and then that causes him to shoot him. I don't really know why. Maybe it's because Kevin Spacey kissed him and he was so ashamed of it he wanted to shoot him, so nobody knew. Maybe that's it. But yeah, it's a central plot point. It's not really explored that much though, because it's kind of used as a homosexuality. That's not really explored that much. It's just kind of used as a device to look at other things. But yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree. The only other thing I wanted to say about homosexuality actually is
it's completely and utterly hideous.
Yeah, it's hideous. No, the scene of where it looks as if Lester's getting his dick sucked is objectively hilarious.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's the thing. It's a central plot point, and it is kind of a shitty way. It is. It's like a comedy film. Like, oh, he's reclining back and putting his hands at the back of his head while your son's bending over. Oh, he must be sucking his dick. It's great, wonderful stuff. Yeah, it is. Yeah, for a movie that won an Oscar for Best Picture, yeah, it's not the best way to get this plot point across. But yeah, there you go. You're right.
Yes. Anyway, next, Beauty.
Beauty. So this movie's called American Beauty, but this is where I think, from reading articles about where American Beauty has kind of failed, I guess, and not being as culturally relevant and kind of being mocked, like it's now a punchline. The beauty aspect is essential to this kind of opinion that American Beauty just doesn't hold up, because yes, I think this is the weakest part of the movie. Of course, there is the famous bit with the plastic bag waffling in the air, like, and how beautiful is that? And, it's trying to really be profound, and it just comes off as kind of pretentious and also just stupid as well at the same time.
It's good score, though. I mean, the song's good.
Oh, yeah, the score's really nice in this movie. I do like it.
Yeah, I agree, basically. I think you're right. It is something which does come across as a bit pretentious in that scene. I think it's kind of weird, because in a way, the title American Beauty almost seems inappropriate when you don't really feel like the film's about beauty. It's more about life.
That's the thing. Well, again, that's what I was going to say. This movie is literally about life, and the beauty bit is kind of just tacked on afterwards to try and that's the way it seems. It's trying to make you really think about, to have some deeper meaning to the movie, rather than just suburbia and all of suburban life is actually not that good. So yeah, I think, and this is the point I want to make about Beauty, about how it's not really that good a point that this movie makes. At the end, when Kevin Spacey's having that monologue, after he dies, and he's talking about how much beauty there is in the world, he's talking about his grandmother's hands, fireworks, his cousin's Firebird, his daughter Janie, and all of these things you would think are like quite cliche in terms of what somebody who has just died or is about to die would reflect on when he's about to die. So isn't the whole point, like, when you look closer, the most boring things like a plastic bag flying in the air, those are the things that are really beautiful. So I don't really get the ending. It's kind of like, well, yeah, of course those things are beautiful. That's what many people think.
Yeah. He's talking about, like, a child being born and stuff like that. And, like, obviously, yeah. I think that's the thing. For me, I think this is where the film becomes very kind of thematically dense in, like, a way where it becomes, like, it loses sight of what it's really supposed to be about in a way. Because you get some things which I like. Like, I like the idea of, the claim that suffering can be beautiful. I mean, that's a point you can make. You can say, well, in a way, suffering is a raw emotion. Like, he basically says, like, he says something like, when you see those moments, it's like you're seeing God. He says another, I think he says, like, a moment that make you feel alive. I think maybe he says that. And obviously that would be true in the sense that seeing all aspects of the world, both the mundane and the exciting, the beautiful and the, I probably shouldn't use the term beautiful, but the kind of moral or nice, and the gross and immoral and the suffering and things like that. All those things are beautiful because they all remind you that you're a human being who's alive in the world. That seems to be kind of the perspective being presented, like a very Zen perspective. And that's a perfectly fine thing to say. The problem is that when you just have a character say that, and the film's not really about that in the main, the film isn't about, hey, look at how beautiful everything is when you look at it from a wider perspective. Which, I mean, if you want a film that's kind of about that, you'd look at a film like The Tree of Life. But this film, instead, is mostly about, hey, being in suburbs sure does suck. And it kind of doesn't make sense to then combine that with, hey, look, man, when you realize things, you can see even death and suffering and the most mundane thing that can happen is beautiful because it's part of this world we live in.
Yeah, that's why.
That's completely contradicting, like, the main thrust of the film, which is a critique.
Yeah, it is contradictory. Society. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. It's definitely contradictory. It is, like, that's what I said. It feels like tacked on. It feels like, okay, we've got to make this movie deeper, and I guess maybe to win an Oscar, maybe that's why this whole beauty thing was strapped on, because it's like, okay, this movie on its own probably wouldn't win an Oscar, because again, it's probably maybe not deep enough, it's not profound enough, and all that. So we got to change it up, because originally this movie was meant to just be. I don't think it had the beauty aspect to it. I think that was something that initially that wasn't the idea. But of course, the movie's called American Beauty, and you have this character called Ricky, who is basically basically the film's philosophy embodied in a person manifested in this like stoner of a teenager who, wants to see the audience to see beauty in everything, like look closer, like he does to that plastic bag, and this is the point I was making where he's told not to conform to, he is told to conform to society by his dad. That's his dad is a representation of what society wants somebody to be, like serves in the army and all that, has a wife, has a kid, just your standard American male, but obviously his dad is hiding something. He's not being true to himself because he's actually gay. It's like most people and all that. So that's what I got from his dad. But anyway, yeah. So he's been told to conform to society by his dad, but he shouldn't. He shouldn't. He's a free spirit. You can't get too caught up in all these things. And that's the thing. It is just a plastic bag. And Ricky is a kid who smokes a lot of weed, and it seems like these deep thoughts are just kind of undercut by that, like by the character. It's just, I can't, obviously this movie is Best Picture winner, but can you imagine if you went over to somebody's house who you knew was a stoner, and they showed you a video of a plastic bag floating in the air? And
I'd say, cool bag, bro.
Yeah, and they were like, how beautiful is that, man? You would just think, okay, like, yeah, sure. I'm not really too convinced about that, to be honest. That would be my reaction anyway. Maybe not yours, but yeah, I just think the beauty part is certainly the weakest point in terms of the themes that this film presents to the audience.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. So yeah, I mean, basically the themes, like I say, I mean, in some areas it's really good, but then in other areas, it kind of, I think, like I say, one thing is that there's so much going on. It's so dense. Every single scene has so much going on in it that you kind of get the impression that some of it steps on the toes of the other stuff, which is unfortunate. But yeah.
Yeah.
Characters.
Yeah, characters. So I just want to say, obviously, off the bat, all the characters are stereotypes. They're all, Ricky, the stoner kid, Colonel Fitz, the general who acts like someone in the military when he's in his own home. And then you've got Janie, emo kid, her mom, Carolyn, a very stereotypical, like, I don't know, is there a word for a character like this? A woman who's stuck up and driven by a career, interests above everything else?
No, I mean, like, I'm thinking of a prude. It's not really the right term.
Yeah.
But, like I don't know, a real Helen Lovejoy.
A real broad. How about that?
Yeah. A real dame.
Well, Helen Lovejoy, does she have a job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really, I don't think. But then I said that does, wait, I mean, does, oh yeah, of course she does. Does Carolyn have a job? It's a really stupid thing to say. Yeah, obviously she does. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty obvious stereotype, but I don't think there's a specific name for it. Just standard.
Yeah.
Suburban mum.
Angela, also another stereotype. She, pretends to be a real, slut, I guess is the best word, but actually she's a virgin. Wow,
yeah, well, I was going to say we could go through the characters like really quickly, just quick fire. So, Lester Burnham. This one we should talk about the most. But Lester Burnham, I mean, obviously we've covered most of everything that is to say about him.
Yes.
But I think the one thing we need to bring up is the fact that, I mean, the fact he's attracted to an underage girl. We've been holding off on it, but we'll talk about it now.
Yes, he is. Wait, is Angela underage or is she 18?
Okay, she's probably 18.
Yeah,
Stop trying to make excuses for it. It's fine. It's a girl substantially younger than him. We'll just say that.
I think we should give Kevin Spacey and his character the benefit of the doubt. I mean, he's not
his character.
Sorry.
And his character.
Oh, I said both and his character. Yeah, because obviously he has not been found guilty of anything, so there's nothing there's no reason to doubt him or his character in any of the movies that he plays. So yeah, that's the thing. Obviously, there have been accusations about Kevin Spacey doing bad stuff to underage boys. Obviously, Angela is a girl, so maybe that helps in not thinking about that when watching this movie. But yes, obviously, his attraction to Angela is meant to be, it is recognised as unhealthy because eventually he doesn't go through it, and the point of it is, hey, guess what? He was really he was attracted to her because he was, he wanted to be 18 again. And so there you go. Angela's 18, whatever. He wants to be a teenager again, but then he realizes, no, I'm not. I'm 42 years old. I shouldn't be attracted to her. And he, wraps her up in a cloth, like, he wants to protect her. because he realizes he's an adult again and he's responsible again. So yeah, that's the point of his arc. So this movie does actually make sure that people recognize that, yes, it is not a good thing for him to be attracted to Angela. That is not something that is good. It is an issue, and it is part of his character arc that he realizes he shouldn't be attracted to her anymore. So yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, obviously, something that needs to be pointed out is that in principle, there's nothing wrong with being attracted to anybody. The problem becomes how you choose to act on that. And also, I think there's another dimension. There's the point at which sometimes attraction and action can overlap. The obvious example being when you are actively lusting after somebody. So I think there's kind of the simple act of being attracted to somebody, like acknowledging, oh, that person who I should not do anything with because either they're much younger than me, or if you're in a relationship, obviously that would be literally anybody apart from your significant other, unless you have an open relationship or something like that. You would say, I could be attracted to that person, but I shouldn't do anything with them. And then obviously on the opposite, on the other side of the spectrum, there's actually having sex with that person. And obviously Kevin Spacey, he can be attracted to her. He's allowed to say, oh, she's attractive. And he can't have sex with her. And the thing that he's doing throughout the film, which he does actually do, which I think you can make criticism of, he's actively lust after her. And I think, so in other words, when we say it's not as bad. Yeah, so basically, because I think that's an important distinction to draw, because obviously there's nothing wrong with saying, just because, I mean, the flip side is that you'd say, oh, hey, have you ever seen somebody who's much younger than you and thought, wow, they're attractive, you're a bad person? No, but obviously if you're looking at somebody who's much younger, you think, oh, she's attractive, I wonder what she looks like with no clothes on, with petals coming out of her tits. Then you've got a problem.
What a weird fantasy, yeah. I guess that is what, if you...
Oh, actually, I will say this. What do you think about the fact that there's flowers is representative of his desire to deflower her?
I mean, I'm not really sure. Is that the case? Is it? No, I just think that they use roses in a bunch of scenes. So, yeah, I didn't get that from that. But, yeah, maybe.
I know that you like to think your shit don't stink, but roses really smell like poo. So.
Okay, yeah. I think talking about those scenes when Angela's naked with a bunch of roses over her, that is probably an area you could actually criticize, that it kind of eroticizes her.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I guess you could say we participate in the eroticization. I don't know if that's the right term. It sounds right.
Maybe.
So fetishization, sexualization of her, objectification of her with Kevin Spacey, which I suppose you could say is problematic.
Yeah, that's the area which is problematic. But again, if you, I don't know, if you want to show how Kevin Spacey is infatuated with her, how else are you going to do it? I'm not really sure how. Maybe you just cut those dream sequences all together. Maybe that's the best thing to do. And maybe, yeah, just have because do you actually need the dream sequences? I guess not, because you already get the idea.
I mean, I think ultimately it's not the worst thing in the world.
No, it's not the worst thing.
Talks about it. Yeah. So yeah, I guess basically what we're saying is that we're fine with Kevin Spacey being a paedophile. So that's that dealt with.
Yep.
Anyway, anything else to say about Kevin Spacey? Because I think we should do quick fire for the rest of the characters.
I think we discussed about him a bunch. He's the only character who's actually, maybe you could argue Janie as well, the only character that actually seems like a three-dimensional character who's real.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. You're right. He does seem like a real person. Speaking of not seem like a real person, Carolyn.
Yes, Carolyn. Complete enough.
She's not very likable.
No, yeah. Not very likable.
Basically that's it. I think you mentioned how a lot of the characters don't have arcs, and I think part of it is that many of these characters are just supposed to be props that represent the static, unchanging nature of suburban life. I think that's why the characters, I think that's why she doesn't have a plot, but obviously it does mean that she's just, nobody's watching and go, yeah, I like Carolyn. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe everybody, the one benefit you could say is because she's kind of an archetype of a character. I think maybe that's different, not necessarily a stereotype, more of an archetype. You can see a part of, or many people might be able to see a part of themselves in her, and that is maybe a good thing, that they can say, oh, I can recognize that there is an aspect of that relates to me, and I can see how that's a problem.
Yeah, I guess so, but again, that's when you are doing something. This goes back to what I was saying before about how she doesn't have an arc. She just goes down this path, and it's the wrong path, but she doesn't come back to what should be the right conclusion to her character. It is, and that obviously makes her less three-dimensional. If she's just basically two-dimensional, only caring about image and success and all of that.
Really, Luke? It makes her less three-dimensional if she's two-dimensional. Well done, Luke. That's some Pulitzer Prize-winning review.
Is that what I said?
You did say that.
Well, you know what? I'm not wrong. So there you go.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Anyway, okay, we'll go quick. Okay, Janie.
Janie, again, the only other possible three-dimensional character. But again, her arc it's a bit weird. So she starts having insecurities about her body, and those are kind of quickly dispatched. Seems like that doesn't become an issue throughout the rest of the movie. She obviously doesn't want to. She wants to stand out compared to her friend Angela, which obviously makes sense. But I do think there's something a bit weird and unrealistic about her character. The fact that you have a guy in Ricky who is quite weird, to say the least, just staring at her and saying, "Yeah, oh, you're really interesting. You're curious," and all of that. And that is something that is, if I think if any normal person were to have someone say that to them, they would run away. That's what I'm saying.
I think the main thing of Janie is obviously it ends with her running away, which is fine. I guess it shows that she's kind of escaped the life, and it literally talks about her moving into the city. So I guess you could say that's a significant thing that happens, but I sort of agree with you that much of what is shown of her isn't really like a proper thing. It's just I don't know. She doesn't. You say she feels like a real person. I think the way she is written, the actions she does, don't really line up. Anyway, but apart from that, the person she goes with, Ricky. I'll just say my opinion on him now, seeing as I'm on a roll. Ricky is fine. Basically, like we said, he's the stoner character who has a lot of the kind of more pretentious lines and pretentious moments, and I think that's probably a problem. So, yeah, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, again, he's like this weird mystical character who's actually right on about everything and actually sees the world for what it is and lives life the way you should. That's the message that this movie's trying to push. And again, I just think, well, he's a stoner. So, I don't know, his plastic bag thing kind of undercuts all his other philosophies. So yeah, there you go. I think this movie would be better if he wasn't like that. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think really only got 2 more characters left. So basically the what's his name? Colonel Fitz. I think we've spoken about him enough already. I mean, I will say I think he's kind of interesting because this film is supposed to be a criticism of suburbanism, and yet Colonel Fitz almost feels more like a sort of hardcore, evangelical, ultra right-wing guy, which I don't really associate with the suburbs.
I don't think evangelical.
To have it. Yeah, not necessarily evangelical actually, but definitely kind of hardcore right-wing. Which when I think of the suburbs, I kind of think of centrist positions, like kind of, not to the kind of person who would, maybe they'd vote for Hillary, maybe they'd vote for Mitt Romney, they're not going to vote for Trump, they're not going to vote for Bernie Sanders, they're kind of in the centre. And I think that having a really hardcore, homophobic, right-wing guy doesn't really gel with that. What do you think?
I'm not sure, because at the end of the day, I guess if this movie is about don't conform, the ultimate conformist is Colonel Fitz. So, yeah, I think his place in this story is merited. But not every character is going to be like Colonel Fitz. Obviously, but yeah, he is again someone who I think his presence in a neighborhood is something that you definitely have one of those guys in there. So I don't really have a big problem with his inclusion.
Anyway, and the final one, I really want to ask you about this because I want to know what you think. I don't really have any thoughts at all, which is convenient. What do you think about his wife? What's the deal with his wife? Just tell me all of your thoughts about his wife. You can talk for as long as you like, Luke, because I really want to hear.
I don't know really what his wife, Alison Janney, of course. I don't know really why she's in there. I guess because she has to be. If she's just a normal wife, then it kind of ruins the dynamic between Ricky and his dad. So she has to be like this weirdo who doesn't say anything. That's probably it. Yeah,
she's just. I mean, maybe they couldn't come up with a character, so they're like, boom. Anyway,
not necessary, but she needs to be in there because Colonel Fitz has to have a wife.
Okay. So am I right in saying that the next thing you wanted to talk about was whether or not this film has aged well?
So yeah, you're correct, Michael. I'm going to read an article now from Stephanie Zacharek. I hope I pronounced that right. From Time. Came out in September 2019, talking about the 20-year anniversary of American Beauty. And this article is titled American Beauty was bad 20 years ago, and it's bad now. In 2019, beating up on Sam Mendes, American Beauty, released 20 years ago this week, is so painfully easy that it seems unfair. The Best Picture winner has fallen largely out of fashion, rarely appears in critics' lists of favourite movies. Its memory seems to have faded for moviegoers too. But in 1999, you were an outlier if you disliked the picture, while professing admiration for it was a way of announcing that you were hip to modern American malaise. Whatever exactly that was, as screenwriter Alan Ball put it in a 2000 interview, it's becoming harder to live an authentic life when we live in a world that seems to focus on appearance. Even though by that time we'd supposedly thrown off the rigid social expectations of the 1950s, Ball noted in a lot of ways this is just oppressively conformist a time. And I think, just breaking off from that, I think that, again, it's the case in the 1990s. But again, that's one of the reasons why I like it. Okay, she goes on. Characters are saddled with Mooney Fox philosophical dialogue. Sometimes there's so much beauty in the world, I feel like I can't take it. Or signpost language loaded with portent. All I know is I love firing this gun. So yeah, that beauty thing we talked about, I agree with that criticism. Generally, phenomenal actors give performances as tortured as sailors' knots. Annette Bening, Lester's wife Carolyn, is chill, bristle, sexually repressed mom and real estate agent. A cartoon stretch to the max. Yeah, like we said, it's a bit of a cliche. As menacing neighbour Colonel Fitz, Chris Cooper signals uptight Marine by merely looking constipated. Spacey brings all the edgy anxiety and brittleness his role demands of him, but not even he can negotiate the movie's unowned "gosh, life is beautiful after all" shift, which swerves at us out of nowhere. Yes, again, that's one of the criticisms we talked about as well. Many critics adored American Beauty upon its release and surely stand by it today, but mostly it appears to be one of those movies with a message that people like, or they say they like because it seems like the right stance to take at the time. Maybe it's more valuable now, 20 years on, as a way of examining what attracts us to certain movies in the first place. Even when movies are not very good, despite how hard they may try to impress us with their laboured artistry, they can be a kind of altar where we leave our vague, unspecified feelings of dissatisfaction or unrest. And here she goes on to something which... Again, we talked about how this movie hasn't aged the best. In 1999, the American economy was healthy, job growth was robust, and investors were optimistic. When you don't have a job at all, your joblessness is your number one problem. But when you have a good job, you can be nagged by the feeling that it just isn't enough. It's a luxury you can afford. And that's not having enough is the disquiet for which Spacey's character, Lester Burnham, suffers. You might think that Lester's lavish fantasies about Angela are more repulsive now in 2019 than they seemed in 1999, particularly in light of the allegations that Spacey, an accused sexual predator, faced himself. But they're actually the least shocking and perhaps most interesting feature of American Beauty. That could be because Angela is the movie's most honest, believable and sympathetic character. She knows how much sexual power she has and delights in it. But we're not invited to view her as a victim, a helpless knave who's preyed upon by the gross older dude. Now, I think we are. I see that's the point. That's something I disagree with. I think at the end, when she's about to have sex with Kevin Spacey, yeah, you are allowed to view her as a victim. Still, Lester's emptiness has no poetry, no matter how much Bolan Mendes hammer on the idea that the movie is about search for a meaningful life. As a person who hated American Beauty upon its release, I can't say whether people who loved it in 1999 will love it or more or less today, but I do know that movies can be made only in their own time and are thus of peace with that time. Yes, I agree. So why do you hate this? Well, I guess she says she hates it when it comes out, but that's what I really don't get about all this revisionism about it. It is a movie of its time. Anyway, we shall continue. No matter how I feel about American Beauty, I can never call it dated, for better or worse. It's just one of those pictures that struck a chord with people, perhaps because none of us knew how bad things could get. This is getting on to why I like it. The economy could crash. We could end up with a president who'd turn our nation into an embarrassment, maybe even lead it to ruin. Well, that happened with 2 out of the last 3 presidents. Wow, funny. Maybe even, could you argue Obama, Michael? Did he lead America to ruin?
What, W?
No, Obama.
Oh, Obozo, sorry.
Yeah, Obozo, come on.
Yeah, he did. No, he didn't. He was fine. I mean, he was not great, but he was average.
6 out of 10, yeah. Terrorists could fly planes into our most visible skyscrapers. There you go, 9/11. American Beauty, through no fault of its own, couldn't have pointed the way to those things, but it's a movie from a time where we didn't know what we wanted. From where we stand now, the dark, very desires of affluent suburban men and women, no matter how ludicrously they're presented, seem even a little touching. Maybe that's partly because our eyes have been opened to the way so many men, unlike Lester, regardless how we feel about him, have simply taken what they wanted, with no regard to whom they are hunting. And here's something interesting. I don't know if you'll agree about this, but American Beauty is a movie about a privileged white guy who feels bad about himself and tries to rectify that by exploding his life, only to lose it all in the end. It's about a man who thought he had control but didn't, and who cannot, at the very least, relate to that. In the context of his own crisis of self-absorption, Lester Burnham couldn't see the real collision course looming ahead, a future of lost jobs and foreclosures, of madhouse doublespeak, issues from the mouths of people whose job it is to lead us, of wars that can't be won and thus keep being fought. Maybe it takes a look back at a ridiculous movie to show us how much we've really lost. So here's the thing about this, the thesis of this article, the central thesis is, and it says it in the ending paragraph, it's like, well, Lester Burnham, it's about a time in which somebody like Lester Burnham is having problems. Well, look at all the problems that exist in America right now. It's stupid, it's ridiculous. And that's the thing, like, this is one of the reasons why I love it. I love this movie. It captures a time in American and Western history that I think it was probably as perfect as it was ever going to be for the average American person. Would you say that would be correct? Given the 9/11 and the economic crisis and then Trump afterwards, like this, it was a time period when the world felt settled. There was optimism as well about the new millennium. The future was bright and all. Yeah, and it is right. Average people with average problems in the 90s about, I don't find my job fulfilling. It does seem a bit quaint now, considering all that's going on. I mean, just in the last couple of days, we have that fucking thing with Iran, and maybe we're going to have another war in the Middle East, which will be great. But I do wonder if we will ever get back to that kind of late 90s malaise, where, everything is just nice and there's no major issues in society, but probably not. I'm guessing that's probably never going to happen. And yeah, I think the problems that the characters have, even though they were quaint, they were right. Like, even as life can get as good as it can be in this, the system in America, people are still unfulfilled. Like, the ultimate height of American Western capitalism and the culture it creates still produces unhappy people whose lives are stare at. And you could see that at the time with a bunch of movies trying to, critiquing, maybe not critiquing, questioning capitalism, maybe that's the best way to put it. Again, it just shows that at the end of the day, this perfect time in American life, yeah, it was still shit. So there's no point in going to that. That is a false goal. It's a goal that we as a society should not be trying to get to. Because, yes, people are still unhappy. So yeah, that's why I do like this movie a lot, because of the time it was set. This movie could not be set in 2009, well, that was just after the recession, but even like in the mid-2000s because of the war on terror. It just wouldn't jive with how Americans were feeling, wouldn't jive in the 80s or the early 90s because of the Soviet Union, obviously. It would not jive in this decade, really, because of, again, the consequences for the recession and also Donald Trump being president. So yeah, this is a movie made in a very specific time. But again, its message of, the message I take from American Western capitalism, the culture, it's never going to make you happy. Yeah, I agree. So if it doesn't work here, if it doesn't work in the late 90s in America, it's never going to work. I've got nothing else to say apart from my conclusion. Do you want to conclude now, Michael?
Yes, and I'll try and answer your question in my conclusion.
Yes.
So, this film, it is a really good film. I think the main thing you were getting at, obviously, is the fact that it was a film which was a product of its time. And I think the main thing you were saying is actually that's a kind of a good thing, because obviously it's nice to see films that serve as sort of time capsules and give you a window into a certain kind of cultural zeitgeist. I think this film definitely does do that. And I also agree with you in appreciating that. But I also think, again, the fact that many of the characters are archetypal and they represent things which are accessible even in a modern context is useful. The fact that you can still, lots of people are probably going to end up working in jobs which they might not find entirely fulfilling, and that's going to be to greater or lesser extents, and they can get some sense of purpose, or not purpose, but a sense of what to do from seeing Kevin Spacey struggling with that very same issue in this film. A lot of people might have moments where they, get too caught up with presenting a false image of everything being perfect all the time, like Carolyn does, and then they'll think, hey, maybe I should actually try and be a bit more sincere and a bit more vulnerable in public about the problems I have. Obviously not weeping in random strangers' arms, but, just being honest about the fact that everything's not perfect. Don't go crazy to make everything seem like you're living in a, Sears catalogue. Is that a thing? Probably. And obviously I could pretty much go through that with every single character. So those are, I think, the main positives. And of course the other positives are, it's a nice film. It's a kind of funny film in a lot of cases. The characters feel very relatable. And it is an enjoyable film to watch. The drawbacks really are mainly, I don't agree. Like, I don't really think that, I don't have a problem. Like, obviously, one of the things you brought up was, first world problems. Like, it seemed like she was kind of doing that. Like, Kevin Spacey wants more. He's got loads, but he wants more. And it's like, yeah, okay, but you're allowed to. Like, when I brought up first world problems, I was kind of doing it as, like, almost a joke. I brought it up earlier. I was like, is it kind of first world problems? Like, not really a joke, but, like, expecting it to kind of be a very minor point to be dismissed. But apparently she thinks it's a legitimate point. I don't think you can criticize a film. Like, you could say it about, like, any film. You go, Bridget Jones' Diary, it's first world problems. I don't like it. Yeah, okay, fine. Star Wars, okay, well, Princess Leia might not like the Empire's taking over, but she's a princess, so what's she complaining about? First world problems. It's silly. So I didn't agree with that criticism at all. The main criticism I would kind of say, honestly, is just one, which is I think this film is very thematically dense in a way where a lot of the themes are stepping on each other's toes. And the obvious example of that is the titular theme, beauty, where, again, one thing she said, which I think is totally true, is that the film ends by saying, hey, life's beautiful, everything's lovely. It almost feels like, well, that could have literally been the end to any film, and there was nothing about this film that made that a suitable end for this film, in a way. I don't think, like, that life is beautiful, sometimes things are beautiful, you just got to see the beauty in the world, is a suitable end to this film any more than it would be an end to any other film. So that was kind of annoying. I don't think you can call this film a perfect film, which I think is kind of where I'd be looking for a 10. I go back and forth on where to place this film, but I think so. It is a 9. Like, I'll say that, and that's not dislike territory by any definition. It's quite positive territory. However, where is it as a 9? I want to say, in terms of enjoyability, I'm going to place it. I think I'm going to place it in my second place, which is actually, it's above Toy Story 2. Obviously, Toy Story 2 and American Beauty are very different films, so it's kind of hard to draw direct comparisons. But I think ultimately, while I think... one other criticism I want to bring up is I think some people do say this film is a bit like Baby's first art film. Like, and I, in a way, almost kind of get what people mean by saying that. But again, I think that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, because ultimately, Baby does need their first art film. So, stop being mean to the babies. Just let them enjoy their art film. No, I'm kidding. But it is, obviously, there are things which are on the nose. There are things where it is stepping on its toes. I'm not going to continue this rhyme. Oh, wait, there's a constant motif with a rose. There we go. But overall, I would say that this film, a very high 9, above Toy Story 2 in my second place. Still below 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. So there we go.
Yes.
The end.
Okay, so I think you've talked a lot about the actual problems with the movie, and the reason... here's the thing, if it wasn't set in such a time that it is set, I would probably be more harsh on it, because, again, it's the plot is not that interesting, and obviously there's issues with the whole beauty thing. If you cut that out, then I think it's a better movie. And like you said, the art stuff in there is like, okay, yeah, it is some fucking kid from film school doing his first film with all of that rose shit. Yeah, I get all those criticisms, but again, I think it's very important that you said before it is like a time capsule, but I think it's more than that, because like I said, it is a good thing that it is of its time, because this is a very interesting time in American life. And I didn't really care about that time capsule of like 1982 or 2004, because it's not as interesting as the late 90s.
Wow, way to attack Crash, Luke. That's a great time capsule of 2004.
Well, the late 90s in America, everything was perfect, wasn't it? The president, Bill Clinton, he was having an affair, but he was a president that was very popular and everyone liked him. The politics wasn't as fractured as it is today, and actually, they were trying to impeach him, but that was early in 1999. So by late 1999, when this movie came out in September, that had been forgotten about. But anyway, politics was basically a lot more stable. The economy was really good. No issues with a massive economic recession. I think America might have even had a budget surplus around this time as well. Wow, imagine that, a budget surplus, eh? And, there was no major war going on either. The Iraq War and Afghanistan started a few years later, a few years after the Gulf Wars. So America obviously is always involved in wars, but there's no major war that's dominating the American psyche. So everything was perfect, but still, this economic system, this culture created people who were really unhappy and really, I guess, unfulfilled. That's the word that sums all of these characters up. So that's why I really do like this movie. And again, it's not really because of how good it is. It's just because of what it is. If you get what I say, Michael. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Yeah, I think it's fair enough.
Yes. So again, it's a stupid reason, I guess, to rate a movie highly, maybe, but I think it is. It's why. Yeah, it's why I really. I don't know if it's an important movie. I wouldn't go that far, but it is just so interesting, and that's why I really do like it. So I am gonna give it a 9 out of 10, like you did. Again, maybe that's too high. I think if this movie, again, wasn't set at this particular time period, it probably wouldn't be a 9. But again, a movie like this kind of feels like it could have only been set at this time. I mean, you look at all the other movies that came out around this time, it's incredible, like The Matrix and The Fight Club and Magnolia and Office Space, all late 90s, it's like, but none in the early 2000s like this. None before this time period. So it is a really fascinating time period, and it captures that unfulfillment with American life at its best. Better than like Fight Club, for instance. So that's why it's going to be a 9 for me. So yeah. 9
I'll tell you what, Phantom Menace really captured my unfulfillment of life.
Okay, so what are we going to be doing next week, Michael?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, we are going into Oscar time by looking at a classic little film. Oh wait, okay. I thought we were kind of moving. Oh yeah, we're not. Oh wow. Oh no. Sorry. Oh wow, I was way off. No. Okay, we are going into. It's a January release. To celebrate the release of Bad Boys for Life,
yes,
we are looking at the original Bad Boys by Michael Bay, our first Michael Bay film. So that's going to be lovely. Yeah,
a very different movie to American Beauty, that is for sure. Anyway, Michael, thank you for listening. We have been selecting and reflecting on American Beauty because, of course, it won the Oscar for Best Picture back in 2000. And again, like this... It's interesting, this movie won Best Picture when 1999 is considered one of the all-time great movie years. So many great movies that came out that year, and this one, which is aged... well, again, I don't think it's aged badly, I don't think that's the right thing
But
to
it's
say.
allegedly aged badly.
Yeah, allegedly aged badly. The one that is kind of
Yeah.
used as a punchline by a lot of people nowadays is the one that won Best Picture. So yeah, great stuff. Anyway, join us next week for Bad Boys. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
And Luke. I've been Luke. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.